Right, a few seconds to the top of the hour. Let's now take you to the United Nations, to New York, where the United General Assembly is discussing the financial outlook for the next decade.
We're adding another 24 billion this year to the 83 billion in climate investment we have supported over the last 5 years. On health, we are working on both immediate COVID response in over 100 countries while helping countries strengthen health systems to better withstand future health shocks. And on gender, we are focused on closing gaps between women and men by removing constraints to more and better jobs and to prevent and respond to gender-based violence, and working low-income and fragile countries to improve the access and quality of sexual and reproductive health services. And on education, we are aiming at $7 billion this year in education funding, working in 65 countries to implement remote learning strategies and working with UNICEF and UNESCO on school reopening frameworks. This crisis calls for a response that recognizes the interconnectedness between economic systems, human health and well-being, and planetary health. It offers an opportunity for countries to build back a more resilient, sustainable and inclusive world. The bank will continue to work with the international community where the SDGs provide a powerful framework for action, and our financing is very much aligned. So thank you for this moment, and let me assure you of the World Bank's group commitment to working together with all of you to help countries through the COVID crisis, as well as to get countries back on track to their long-term development goals. Together with solidarity and with financial support, we can help the countries who need it most. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Axel von Trossenberg, Managing Director of the World Bank Group. Next up is a South African economist specializing in macroeconomic policy, including tax justice. Over to Busi Sebeka. And Busi, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Sustainable Development Goals will require a reimagining of macroeconomic policies and frameworks in ways that are human-centered and intersectional. It will require global fiscal solidarity. Interventionist fiscal policies will be critical. Our research on Africa in particular has demonstrated that at times, government have underutilized their fiscal space to change the socioeconomic realities of their citizens. Governments will need to utilize and create fiscal space in order to achieve their SDGs. Contrary to fiscal consolidation practices, government expenditure will need to expand in areas such as health, education, and other areas of social protection. Governments will also need to invest in green and purple economies. The former refers to environmentally sustainable expenditure and the latter to the care economy. The care economy, for instance, has been shown to have high fiscal multipliers, which will benefit the economy and in turn enable the financing of the SDGs. Spending on the SDGs will pay for itself. The redistribution of wealth and income will be critical. Wealth taxes and higher income taxes will need to be considered and implemented at national levels. At the international level, combating illicit financial flows will be an example of how we can redistribute wealth globally. Through global fiscal solidarity, we should collectively think about introducing minimum global taxes to end the race to the bottom. In terms of debt, in an effort for global fiscal solidarity, debt relief and forgiveness, unconditional, should be given to countries that have chronically been indebted. We must acknowledge how debt is reflective of systematic global inequalities. Focusing on external debt weakens countries' capacities to prioritize the SDGs. In terms of borrowing, countries will need financing that is not conditional, at least not in the traditional ways. Therefore, we must reimagine and reform international financial institutions such as the World Bank and the IMF to gear them towards financing the SDGs. In terms of monetary policy, we will need to consider non-conventional tools. For some countries, this means, for instance, abandoning inflation targeting. Finally, participation and transparency need to be centered in how we move forward. New social compacts must be forged. The role of civil society stakeholders, such as myself, will be to provide rigorous economic analysis and evidence-based policy recommendations to our governments. COVID-19 has demonstrated that we can no longer afford to do more of the same. Thank you.
For coming in under 3 minutes, we appreciate it. We turn now to two more African voices. First, Ms. Leila Fourie, CEO of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, followed by Ms. Kalila Kelsmbowe, CEO and founder of Unleashed Africa Social Ventures Youth Disruption.
Good day, distinguished guests and partners in sustainability. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is historic. If we pay attention to the history books, we will find that they contain important lessons which may help us to avoid the mistakes of the past and rebuild a more resilient and, importantly, more equitable world. In the past, the large financial markets of advanced economies have played an important role in the post-crisis recovery. Emerging markets were largely excluded from such an experience. With each passing period of economic pressure, the inequality gap between the advanced world and the developing world widens further. We cannot allow this to continue. The immediate reaction to the crisis has seen historic levels of stimulus being pumped into economies to manage the short-term demands of the crisis. Unfortunately, the emerging world finds itself with an affordability issue. Added to this, the pressure of poor health infrastructures, high debt service costs, and a declining tax revenue base, and we have an expensive problem with a hole in the purse. If emerging economies turn to traditional financing strategies, this means a further rise in public debt levels and an almost certain delay in achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The irony of this outcome is that those countries most in need of the SDGs are also the ones most at risk for rising inequality. In summary, the challenge is clear. Emerging market economies need access to affordable funding to end the cycle of indebtedness. Emergency loans at lower interest rates have indeed been a good step towards addressing the issue. But the extent of pre-crisis debt means that they are anchored in rising waters. Debt is just half of the affordability issue. The other half is revenue. And revenue comes from growth. As the private sector rebuilds, they have the power to align to the SDGs. The combined effort of public-private sector has the ability to maintain momentum in the adoption of the SDGs. In South Africa at the JSE, we launched a suite of sustainability bonds, which we believe are more relevant now than ever. In the time of crisis, we turn to the history books to guide us. We must ensure that the story that we pen this time is one to be proud of, one that builds for the future, one that builds back better.
When I started my company, Unleashed Africa, in 2016, I was told that I would not make it because I was young, a female, and to some, did not have the right skin color. This was because I chose a disruptive path, one that looked at things as they are and chose to say, no, I am going to do something else, something big, impactful. Unleashed Africa Social Ventures works at the intersection of youth development, social innovation, and job creation. In and through my work, I am driven to use systems thinking to unearth intrinsic challenges associated with some of Africa's most pressing challenges, mainly associated with youth. I looked in how we can tap into frequently overlooked and glossed over talent pockets of the continent, create and strengthen value systems and value chains, all the while focusing on integrating technology and innovation for scale. My company focuses on creative arts and development, gender and social enterprise ecosystem development. We design, create and develop products, projects and programs that not only connect young people to sustainable income generating opportunities, but also create avenues for them to grow as leaders in their own right. Our goals are to provide decent work, upskill, empower youth leadership, enable the growth of social enterprises, and strengthen the capacity of young women to execute on their dreams. In my work, it is critical to think about 360-degree solutions. Having the right partnerships is key. As the African proverb says, it takes a village. I am not out to build an SME. My goal is to build an African giant. Big businesses that focus on the triple bottom line: people and impact, profits and sustainability, planet and conservation. This is not the time for small-time solutions. If the past few months have taught us anything, it is that we need to get our planning hats off and get our hands and feet dirty as we truly push humanity forward, not just talk about it. We cannot afford to tolerate inequality in any sphere. We cannot afford to tolerate poverty, poor healthcare, and inadequate education that is leading our world nowhere. No one left behind. Do we truly believe it? We are only as weak as our weakest link. Hence, by not truly and authentically dreaming big and executing together, we ruin our chances not only for collective survival, but prosperity. Pamoja is the only way forward. The bicker of politics, blame, and allure of self-interest do not serve us. We must awaken to our collective need and dare to be brave enough to abandon the status quo. Take courage and ask difficult questions and open the doors for new possibilities. We need the right type of financing, proper skilling and upskilling, enabling policies, and a true common agenda for progress. The next 10 years will have a lot to tell about the side of history that we decided to sit on. I choose to go big. I choose bravery and daring, empathy and authenticity. I choose holistic progress for all, to live a legacy that will leave a legacy. What side do you choose to sit on today?
Preach, Kalila, preach. Thank you to our finance speakers. Let's now move to hear about the actions that other stakeholders are taking to bring solutions and overcome these gaps, from civil society coalitions to local governments and the private sector. Let's start looking at what is being done around climate action. I now have the pleasure to invite contributions from Ms. Nasreen Al-Saim, a climate activist from Sudan, Mr. Brad Smith of Microsoft, Ms. Yvonne Akisoya, the mayor of Freetown, and Ms. Christiana Figueres, Mission 2020.
Distinguished guests, I'm very glad to be here with you today, and thank you for His Excellency Antonio Guterres for giving the floor and also for arranging this event. I will be speaking in Arabic as it's my mother tongue, so please use your translator.